where's the treatment? What are we doing? And why aren't we doing better?
So all the epidemics, at least that I heard you name, are epidemics of habit or addiction. So I'm curious, how do we get so addicted? Like why do we stay so stuck?
Yeah, the story gets so fascinating. So it turns out that there's this very basic learning pathway that's set up to help us survive. And we need to, so there are a couple of things we need. We need food, we need to procreate, and we need to avoid danger. And actually, if you want to show this, I think I sent along a slide that I can just walk people through this.
Yeah, let's look at it.
This process has been very, very well described from a psychological and a psychiatric perspective. Back in the 1800s, there's this guy, Ed Thorndike, who started studying animal behavior. B.F. Skinner, many of you may know his name. He became famous for this pathway that's described, and you can see here as operant conditioning or reinforcement learning. And basically, if we see something that looks good, our brain says, eat that. We have this craving, and so we eat it, or we, smoke if we're, let's start with eating. And then we lay down this memory that says, remember what you ate and where you found it. So that was set up to help us survive. You see food, you eat the food, and this dopamine signal goes to your brain that says, remember what you ate and where you found it. In modern day, we all have a refrigerator, or at least, most of us. And we can, we don't need to remember where food is, right? We don't have to go foraging for it. And we also don't have to, in most societies that are relatively safe, we don't have to worry about where the danger is. But these processes are still at play. So our brains start doing things like learning to eat when we're stressed or anxious, or we learn to smoke to relieve stress or whatnot. So you can see this operant conditioning pathway is still at play in modern day, even though it's literally killing us. Smoking, #1 preventable cause of morbidity and mortality in the US. And so I'll just finish with this slide. These blue pieces actually show where we bring in current treatments. So again, mechanistically, if we can understand how something's happening, we can then use that mechanistic pathway to try to target things. So for example, my patients with alcohol use disorder, if they're, there's this saying, people, places, and things. If they avoid people, places, and things, avoid those cues, they're less likely to drink. My patients say, duh, I get it. With smoking, for example, it's a little harder to avoid all the different places that we smoke. So we bring in treatments like substitution behaviors, like eat candy instead of smoking. And you can see how that, kind of treats around the behavior that we're targeting. The problem with both of these is you can see with these orange arrows that neither of them actually dismantle this core addictive loop, which may be why, just as an example, smoking, if somebody quits smoking today, the likelihood that they're going to stay quit in a year is about 5%. So, the treatments aren't at the level that I think most of us would like to see. So that's the basic process. It was set up to help us survive, and it's actually set up so that we can kind of free up brain space to do other things. You set a habit of, getting up in the morning, remembering how to walk, remembering how to eat, remembering how to talk. Because if we had to relearn everything, we'd be exhausted by breakfast. So it can be helpful in a way of helping us survive. But if these things get out of hand, which is what we see a lot with habit formation of these addictive habits, then it becomes problematic.
I'm looking at this through the lens of mindfulness, probably because we brought it up, we talked about it, and because, as you know, I'm going through this meditation, mindfulness meditation teacher training, of which you're on the faculty, which is awesome. But now I'm looking at this through this lens, and when I look at the blue arrows, it's like deny, resist, deny, resist, deny, resist.
Yeah.
So now I'm looking through this like a whole new lens as to why these typical approaches don't work, because they're about denial and kind of resistance. Yeah. Anyway, that just came up for me for the first time ever.
Oh, so what was it, the Borg on Star Trek, where they say resistance is futile? The Borg actually knew what time it was, because we could interpret that in modern psychological terms as willpower does not work. Good luck if you're going to stick with willpower, because it's futile. And there's a lot of work now suggesting, it's like I learned in medical school. If you want to lose weight, there's this formula. Just make sure you have more calories out than in. So instead of eating cake, eat salad. The formula is correct. Yet an academic definition of how to lose weight is not what actually happens in the clinics. My patients come in and say, I get it, I just can't do it, because we don't wander into the kitchen early in the morning looking for ice cream. We come in late at night when we're stressed, when we're lonely, when we're tired, and all these things where our willpower is at its weakest. And in fact, there's good research now showing that the weakest part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, is the part that's involved in willpower. And so it's kind of doomed from the beginning. It's this, we're relying on the weakest link to help us at the hardest times of day. Forget about it. No wonder the quit rates are 5%. No wonder there's this thing called yo-yo dieting, where people, they get on a roll and lose 10 pounds and then suddenly gain it back. Like the majority of people on a diet gain back their weight and potentially more. That's why it's called yo-yo dieting. Then they try it again, and all this stuff. So that resistance piece is exhausting and doesn't actually work.
It's a lot of things are occurring to me for the first time in this conversation. One is like this idea. So do you buy into the idea that we have a bucket of willpower in the morning and we eat away at that bucket all day long? And it's, do you buy into that we have so much and then we kind of use it up?
It's a controversial topic, and there's been a lot of research on it. There's a guy, Roy Baumeister at Florida State, that studied this. And so their research suggests that that's the case, that we become depleted throughout the day. It's controversial. Not all people agree with that hypothesis. Experientially, I see a lot of my patients coming into my clinic saying just that. So there is some face validity to it. And so I would say for the purposes of experimentation, we see this happen all the time. I see this with my patients.
Yeah. And I experience it too. And I can't come up with a language for this, but it occurs to me like there's the willpower that says, I won't do this, I won't do this, I won't do this. Like, right. And it gets emptier and emptier throughout the day. And then I think like there's this other thing that's happening through us through the day, which is like our energy, like maybe we're being energetically depleted and emotionally depleted, like throughout the day. And our deepest level of energetic and emotional depletion occurs when our willpower is the lowest.
Yeah, I think that's true. And what do we do when we're depleted? We go back to our old habits, because our brain says, I'm just too tired to think any new thought or to try to see if this